Hey everybody, this is Boysen Hodgson, the Communications and Marketing Director for the Mankind Project USA. And I am sitting today with Jean-Francois Benoist, JF. And we're here to talk about this book, Addicted to the Monkey Mind. Change the programming that sabotages your life. JF, thank you for coming and sitting down and hanging out with me.
Very excited to be here with you today, Boysen. Thank you for having me.
And yes, you're welcome. Thank you. You had to be a little persistent to get this appointment with me right around now. So you and I have been hanging out and talking about the New York Times and the publishing industry and all of that, but I really want to talk about the book. So I dove into this book, and I got to tell you, the first 10 pages of this book gave me an anxiety attack. This book is anxiety provoking. For me, I will own that personally. Here's where I want to start with the book is this book is all examples. It is all storytelling. How I want you to start with telling us how you came to create this, and then why did you make it so difficult for me to read the first 10 pages?
I'd like to hear more about that. Can you do that first?
Yes.
Tell me what was anxiety producing? Tell me.
Your storytelling, first of all, your storytelling is really wonderful. Your use of dialogue is really wonderful. You develop characters in the book to use as the frames by which you're delivering all the learning. And the first stories that you tell in the book immediately trigger in me a lot of my old beliefs, a lot of my old embedded kind of programming, as you talk about in the book, so that when I'm with the character, without really revealing a lot about the characters, when I'm with the characters, I'm like, oh no, like I know what that feels like. I know what that shame feels like. I know what that, oh no, don't do that. You know, I know what that anxiety feels like. So when I read the very first story in the book, I stopped and turned to my wife and I was like, I'm shook by reading the story. So
Okay.
yeah, that's what happened.
So I want you to know this is what we've been hearing. The book's been out just for a couple months, and this is what we're hearing is just that it's so relatable that people are experiencing. It's like they're relating to the characters so much. And I think, you know, the good thing is that you don't stay there in anxiety. If you just keep reading, right, you get to work it through with the character. But right. I think we did it that way because we wanted people to be able to feel like this applied to them, because the skills are about our lives. And this is the work I've been doing is I want it to be applicable. To me, that's the core of change is if you don't have something that you can't apply to your life, how are you going to really change? You can't learn to ride the bicycle by talking about it or thinking about it, right? The same is true with restructuring, you know, core beliefs. It's the same thing. So I love your question. So how did it come to be? Okay. So 10 years of doing experiential engagement therapy, okay, at a center that I own, has taught me basically that everybody is the same. Kind of as I was saying to you earlier, it's like emotionally we're all the same, but somehow we keep pretending like we're not. You know, somehow we isolate ourselves. We live in a society that's shame-based and fear-based. And so because of that, we keep perpetuating the same kind of thought process, the same kind of challenges that we can't get over. You know, Einstein said, you know, you can't solve the problem from the same mindset that created it. But yet that's exactly what we do, right? So I'll give you a couple examples. First, how it got created is I would do a session in a group and a big process would occur experientially. And then I would think, okay, wow, this is really potent. Like I would like to write this in a book. But I couldn't take the real life example, right? I had to sort of massage it to make it. And so what we did is we created these two characters, Kevin and Elizabeth. Yeah. And basically all that they go through is real life event, but from many different individuals, not just one person, right? And so we combined it in those two people. And then we had to design it so that it would fit more of a normal way of living, what really goes on in your normal life. So the first scene of Kevin, you know, the first chapter of what happens to him was based on a very intense, so I can tell you a little bit of the details, but someone who basically was made a major mistake and just ended up injuring somebody else, okay, in the mistake that they made. And as we were processing the whole emotional sort of catharsis that was going on for that person, we were able to create Kevin. So it was really fun. Very, very fun.
So that's 10 years. Now let's go back. You are also, of course, a Mankind Project. You are a full certified NWTA leader. You have been around the Mankind Project for 22 years.
Yep.
So put together for me your therapy practice plus men's work. Go back 22 years.
Very cool. Very cool. So one of the miracle that I think in MKP, I don't know that we realize the depth of what we're doing. You know, recently I was talking to Bill Kauf and he said, you know, we've really evolved because he went through the training again in the last, I don't know, few years. And we were talking about this and we're talking about how wonderful that is. It's just like we started with an incredible foundation. And here's the foundation, okay? The foundation in MKP is the principle of, in modern psychology, we talked about experience-dependent neuroplasticity. What that means is the way the neurons fire in the brain, right, has been created by repeated experiences we went through. So if your father yells at you and say, why didn't you do your homework? And you hear that thousands of times growing up, you build a belief in your own mind, I'm not good enough unless I perform, based on how many times the experience was repeated. So it's not so much, most people, when they think of making a change, they go to their analytical mind trying to solve the issue, okay? But imagine for a moment that what we understand in MKP is that you have to go to the body first. And so let me explain. Imagine that you have, for 20 years, walked into a room and there's a dog in the room, and every single time you walk in the room, you kick the dog. And then suddenly one day, you walk in the room and you just say, I'm done kicking the dog, and I just want to love on the dog. Will the dog adjust to your new behavior? Of course not, right? So imagine that the dog is our body. So imagine that you've been conditioned and programmed over and over and over by your parents who had good intention, but they were shame-based and fear-based, and they just kept inflicting that. And so now, as you grow as an adult, you keep kicking yourself. Okay? So that's why positive affirmation don't work. I call it like lying to yourself until you believe it's true. You know, what actually happens is if you have a new mindset that comes on board and say, you know what, I'm really an awesome guy, right? Your body's going, no, you're not. You've been telling me for 20 years that you're a fraud, that you don't add up, you know, or that you're not good enough because you don't do enough or you don't perform enough. So this is the principle and the miracle of the work we do in MKP, is that in order to restructure a core belief, you have to go to the body level, and that's what we do so well. So the years of, you know, how I got there is because I studied belief work. I studied a process of Socratic inquiry for 3 years at the Option Institute in Massachusetts with Barry Neil Kaufman. And then I started bridging what we do in MKP experientially with the belief work that I had been learning about. How does the mind, right, that creates belief, that creates the experience in the body, how does it relate to what's going on in the body? So one of the things that I think we can do further in MKP is bring more awareness around the belief now. And I think we're evolving into this. You know, we're evolving into, okay, we got the body level, but let's learn how that really interacts with creating a new mindset now to really reverse the old neural pathways in the brain.
Beautifully said. So accidental genius is a thing, right? The accidental genius of Kauf, Tosi, and Herring in creating this. And now we have now there's so much evidence based through Dan Siegel's work and Bessel van der Kolk and all the work on adverse childhood experience, ACE work and trauma-based work and trauma-informed care, that we have to keep going back to the body over and over and over.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, wonderful. So going into the book, as you said, it's kind of defined on stories, built upon stories. And reading through, I kept seeing, this makes complete sense with the work of MKP. It meshes into the work that we do and also provides a super accessible way to kind of see it played out on a screen, because the way you've written it, I can see the conversation occurring. I can see the kind of back and forth that's happening in the interaction with belief. So talk more about, well, where do we want to go? Where do you want to go from here? What else do you want to tell us about the book?
Well, oftentimes I've been asked quite a bit, like, okay, so, what's your favorite part of the book? Like, what gets you really lit up, right? And the number one thing for me is actually the fact that the characters it begins with their life is in the toilets, and they're struggling with all kinds of things that we can relate to, right? Marital issues, career issues, struggle with some alcohol or drugs, or all kinds of workaholic, doesn't matter, right? And as they go through this journey and they start learning different way of living, and it's all applicable because they're learning these skills, at some point they start shifting enough, right, that they start realizing that this is a way of living. It's not just I'm going to a therapy session or a workshop. It's like, this is about shifting the way my mind operates. And it takes application. And so I love how the book illustrates that. The next thing that I love is how the character starts teaching it to the people in their lives. Right. And that was like, okay, this is the true transformation now, because this is what we all want in our lives. We want to be able to serve others. Once we've been able to change ourselves, we want to help others. And that's what we do in MKP. That's why we serve in the way we do, and we love it so much. And then the last part that I absolutely adore is when both of the characters go back to their original programming, and there's scenes where they have to meet their parent again. And so they've been working on themselves, and this is where the original programming was inflicted on them. And now you get to witness them where they are so resolved that they can actually have a relationship with their parent that is so loving and so connected, because they're not under the spell anymore of, superimposing their programming onto their relationship with their parents.
Yes.
Right? So that's like that sequence of event. And through the fact that the book also gives you little exercises, right, that are applicable to you as it relates to what just happened to the character. So I think the combination of that is what makes the book a powerful tool for people to use.
Very well said. So let's break down. So we've got the monkey mind, and I realize that we've just kind of dove all the way into it. Talk about the monkey mind as opposed to, and then kind of what you are putting forward as, here's what we have to develop in order to overcome. So define the monkey mind, and then go into the observational.
Awesome. So the best way would be to illustrate an example. Okay, so the monkey mind is the conditioning way that we were raised. Okay, so when a mother and a father says, why didn't you do your homework? Their intention is kid doing homework, kid being successful. But in their frustration, when you're 0 to 7, what actually happens to you is you're like a sponge. You don't have the analytical ability to discern what the intention was, or maybe dad was really stressed out at work today. Whatever it is that happened, you don't have that discernment, but you pick up everything energetically, and it goes directly to the nervous system, okay? So the belief that gets formed over time, when I hear those kind of statements over and over, why can't you be more like your brother? I'll give you something to cry about. is that there's a belief that starts to be formed that in the teen years becomes more rigid, which is there's something wrong with me if I cry, right? It's very basic, but you know, Kevin in the book goes through that, and it's very common for men that we've been taught that. So you don't know how to unshake that because your body has fully adopted that belief, and your nervous system will be triggered if you start emoting, okay? Because your mind is still saying the way to protect yourself, remember your dad was going to give you the brunt of it, so now you got to protect yourself from that, so make sure that you don't show emotion. But when you grow to be older and you're in a marriage and now you've gone through 3 divorces because you can't show emotion, you don't have intimacy in your relationship, right? So that's what programming is. That's what I call the monkey mind, is how we've been conditioned to think. And those ways really protected us at the beginning. They were useful for us. They served us. And we've never been taught how to actually see that today they're detrimental to our well-being. So that's the monkey mind. That's the repeated beliefs we've adopted, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. And every time we reactivate one of those beliefs, our nervous system is like immediately panicking, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so that's the monkey mind. So the other aspect is what the book teaches us is how to develop an observing mind. So the key is that instead of using the same method as the monkey mind, because the dad and the mom use shame as a motivator to change. They were invested, and that's how their mother and father did it with them. And so they're using this, you know, shame as a way to motivate yourself to be better. They're not observing that what ends up happening is you have more shame and more anxiety. That's the result of it. But they just think you're going to get to be a better person, okay? So in order to be able to shift that, we can't keep using that. If that's what I was saying earlier, then Einstein said that's the definition of insanity. I'm going to use a shame mindset trying to get rid of shame.
Right.
You know, it would be like saying I'm going to use negative thinking to get rid of negative thinking. Right? That will never, ever work.
Right.
So what we need to do is develop an observing mind. Okay, so here's the difference. The observing mind doesn't have an agenda like the monkey mind does. The monkey mind wants you to fix the problem and fix it now and get rid of it. And it wants to get rid of all the discomfort and whatever it is, and it's constantly pressuring you to perform and to perform just like your conditioning did. The observing mind is simply developed by observing the monkey mind and discovering what it actually delivers. Having an experience in the body of what it delivers. If you do enough of that, it's a little bit like the example that I give is awareness is what creates change. If you put bread in a toaster and the toast pop up and they're burnt, right? How do you get toast that are not burnt? Well, you use awareness. You look at the dial and you see the dial's on 6, so you turn it down to 3 and you put 2 new pieces of bread, and that awareness allows you to get the toast you want. But here's how we behave. We look at the toaster and the burnt toast and we start cussing at the toaster and saying, who invented a toaster that gives me burnt toast? You know, and we lose. And that's how we operate out of our monkey mind. We're in this kind of like a hamster on a wheel, stuck in those patterns. So most of us don't realize that self-acceptance, developing self-love, is the ability to be aware that what you do, that this monkey mind does not work. That in itself is enough to create, if you do it enough at a body level, at an experiential level, you eventually get that following the monkey mind is pointless. And you drop it like a hot potato when you become truly aware. So the skills in the book teach how to achieve this observing mind through skills of breath, through skills of inquiry, through skills of emotional fluidity, right? Which is what we teach in MKP.
Yes, that's exactly, and there's the dog. That's exactly where I was going to go to next, is the specific skills that you start to dive into in the book. And again, it's like, wow, reinforcement of a whole body of knowledge, plus what we've learned in MKP, plus what we practice, and integrated into this narrative frame that when Elizabeth and her husband start having these dialogues back and forth, where, you know, Elizabeth is able to say, okay, asks me some questions about that. It's just like, yeah, isn't that what I want? Isn't that what we're all really looking for, is to be able to have that relationship to help me get out of my stuck, help me get out of that, the monkey mind for myself, and move on. So the book's been out just for a couple of months. You gave me a startling statistic about how the book is doing.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. So how's the book doing? What are you hoping for? What's next for this?
Well, the largest vision is to really help people. I'm working with therapists. I've been doing continuing education for the last 5 years in experiential engagement therapy, which I trademark. And it's giving them this new modality they can use with people. And I also teach it directly to people who want to use it in their lives. So what we're hearing back is the book is already doing that on its own. So I'm really excited about that. That's kind of the first step, is I just want people to have access to this tool. And as we talked about, I'm going to donate the profits of the book to MKP. MKP has been my family for 22 years, so I'm really happy to give back. And so I feel that we need to. We're in a very, very golden time in terms of consciousness. Oprah started it many years ago to make it more mainstream, the understanding that emotionally we all have anxiety, things going on in our lives, and that we need to start connecting with one another around that. Brené Brown's work has come out and really helped, to define. She said the wholehearted people, the people who are truly happy, are the types of people who have a high capacity for discomfort. They don't see life as just one way, which is you're supposed to be happy all the time. No, that's not how it works, right? So in the book, one of the things that I think is profound is the emotional fluidity, using emotion as a guidance system, right? It talks about, we had that intelligence when we were children. So when you're a child, you watch a 5-year-old, they go from mad to glad to sad in less than 5 minutes flat. So why are they emotionally fluid? Well, they haven't developed judgments about emotion. They don't say crying is bad or getting angry is not okay. And so because we lost that, okay, we don't have the ability to shift our beliefs. Because if you want to know what you believe, just go and ask yourself how you feel. So it's a lot easier to track beliefs first by asking, how am I feeling and what belief is creating this emotion? Because it's not the stimulus out there that's creating how I feel, right? So my hope and my big dream is I would like to open hubs around the country. I've had this vision for about 5 years, and I talked to Bill Kauf about this, and he was like tickle pink about it. We laughed a lot about it. But it's like, imagine this idea, kind of like a community center, but it looks like a Starbucks environment where you go and sit in circles, and we could include some of the men's work, the women's work. And it's like, but it's a place where it's a social gathering that's there all the time, available to transcend the monkey mind and the mind that keeps producing shame and anxiety. So it's like, get out of isolation, basically. So that's kind of like the biggest dream, and to really start offering different modality than the ones that I think are outdated. Even the 12-step that's really well intended, that tries to help people. There's an aspect of it that's really powerful, and there's other aspect of it that just are archaic and they need improvement, right? So the idea is to offer, like what we do in MKP, we offer innovative technology for people to really create the change they need, So yeah.
To our evolution, to all of our evolution. So thank you very much for the offer, and we'll figure that out. But in the meantime, how can people learn more about EET, learn more about you, and where to go to get the book?
Awesome. So the book is available on Amazon, so you can just look it up on Amazon. We have a website. It's just jfbenoist.com. So as in John, F as in Frank, Benoist, Benoist.com. You will see there you can join some of the podcasts that I'm going to be building for this coming year. There's going to be some online course. There's live seminars that I do. So there's a whole bunch of, resources there. And there's also the treatment center that I own, which is The Exclusive Hawaii. So it's 3 words spelled out, theexclusivehawaii.com. And this is more specifically for people who struggle with addictive behaviors, eating disorder, depression, PTSD, drug and alcohol issues. So it's an 8-bed residential treatment center. My wife and I founded that 10 years ago. And we love the work that we do. It's a very, very innovative approach. And it's basically teach all the skills that are in the book, And so, yeah, it's on the Big Island of Hawaii. It's a 52-acre property, a 7,000 square foot private estate. It's just a wonderful place. And yeah, we're very fortunate to do what we love.
Beautiful. And so Jean-Francois Benoist,
Yep.
the book is Addicted to the Monkey Mind. So go check it out. Thank you very much for spending some time with me, and I look forward to talking again.
Thank you so much for having me, Boysen. And as we say here, aloha.
Aloha. Yes, indeed.